What is happening, Sales Ascender? Sean here, back at you with another high-ticket tune-up. And today's episode, we're actually going to go through 6 distinct patterns in body language when it comes to the nose. Stay tuned. This is a good one. What's up, Sales Ascenders? Hope you're having a great week. It is Hump Day Wednesday. Woo! And we're back for a next round of body language in sales when it comes to the nose. Today, we're starting part 1 of the nose. There's going to be a couple pieces of this, and I'm really going to focus specifically on 6 distinct nose body language movements or nose features that you should need to know about when you're in a sales call. And so, again, 6 distinct body language patterns of the nose in sales is what we're going to cover today. So let's just dive right into it. So what is the nose all about? Well, at birth, did you know this? Your nose seeks mother's milk. I didn't even know that until I was doing a lot of research on body language, a number of years ago. And I came through this book and it was all about like the ancient history of the nose. And one of the things I found was like, man, like the nose actually can smell subconsciously mother's milk, which I thought was really cool. So that's the first thing. Secondly, it helps us to find foods that we like. Of course, when we smell something that's good, we want to move towards it. And likewise, when it's bad, we go in a different direction. It also helps to keep us safe. A couple of different ways that it does this. Number 1, you can smell harmful pollutants and chemicals. But number 2, you can also smell off-ripe food, right? So if food is off ripe and it's now no good anymore, our nose can actually sense that, and then that little feeling in our gut comes out and says, yo, don't eat that food. So important to know that. Also filters the air that goes into our lungs. So there is a filtering mechanism in your nose. This is typically where boogers come from. If you wanted to know, that's the system that it uses. And what's really cool about this is in the dating game, you may have heard this, or at least I just want to verify this fact for you, that your nose can smell pheromones, right? Even if you can't noticeably smell anything, you are attracted to your partner by the pheromones that they emit from their body. And so the nose is really valuable for a lot of things. It's also essential to communication and body language. Diving into this, first thing about the nose is covering. When somebody covers their nose like this, you're seeing this picture happen right now, like, oh, right? And so when somebody covers this, it's actually an evolutionary habit. It came from way back in the day, at least the evolutionary psychologists say this came from a time when people were fearful for their life and they didn't want their predators to hear them breathing. And so what they would do is they would cover their nose and keep it quiet so the predator actually couldn't hear. And so thinking about that in mind, this is usually associated with shock or surprise, insecurity, fear, doubt, apprehension. We're just like, oh my God. Usually that's how comes with it, right? So it's like that gasping of air with covering the nose. That's what I'm talking about here. This is the first thing that we need to be aware of. If everyone ever goes like this, we know that there's either shock, surprise, insecurity, fear, doubt, or apprehension. In a sales conversation, what we want to do if someone does that, hopefully it's not your fault why they did that. It's typically the right place to do a pattern interrupt and be like, are you okay? Just ask, are you okay? That's a great way to do that, right? Next, I want to talk about wrinkling. So number 2 is the wrinkling, or you go upward, or some people can actually raise one of the nostrils up. I can't do it, but some people can. And when you wrinkle, this is known as what we call the bunny nose, right? Bunny noses do this all the time. What does it mean? Well, it's the muscles that are sensitive to negative emotions. So this happens in a couple of different ways, right? It can happen very quickly, or it can happen like, right? Typically, negative emotion will hit you. So the thought is created. Thought causes emotion. Emotion causes action. This happens in a subconscious process, especially when we're in a sales call. So when somebody says something to you, if you're the prospect or you're as a sales pro saying it to a prospect and it's not received very well, that thought creates a negative emotion. The negative emotion will simultaneously create a subconscious move of a wrinkle, like, oh man, and you can see it all the time. So look for it when you see this. Typically, this means you need to, go backwards and just ask a few more questions about that. And this is something that's involuntary. It happens when you're a little tiny baby. If you ever watch a baby, they smell something they don't like, they're going to, and then that actually continues all the way to death. This is an involuntary thing because the muscles in the nose are very, very sensitive to negative emotions connected to the brain, which I think is a cool thing. Moving on, twitching. What happens when your nose twitches? When you're watching a prospect in a conversation and their nose twitches, what does this mean? Well, it could mean an itch, right? But the other thing I was sharing with you is this is that subconscious move. This happens in 1/25th of a second. So if you're super perceptive or you watch your sales calls in replay in fast speed, you can see this very clearly. One of the best tips I can ever share with you, if you're doing your own sales calls or even you're managing a team that's doing sales calls, watch them in like almost 2x speed at the fastest that your ears can actually process the volume, audio. Like some people can process at 4x, some people can 3, 2, 1.7, 1.5. But when you watch a sales call in a replay on speed, like up speed, you'll see the nose twitch. You'll see all the body language of the face will be defined like way more clearly. And so that's one of the things I do with all of our clients is I will watch all of their sales calls in fast motion because I want to see body language of the prospect. And then I can go back and say, okay, well, look, when you said this, this happened. This was the body language you need to look for. It's a great training mechanism. And then also we can say, once this happens, here's how to accommodate that. And so if you're training a team, know that. If you're watching your own sales calls, it's a great thing to do. Usually this signals disgust. It's an instant like, oh, boom. Well, I even did it faster than like that's more than 1/25th of a second. But if I just go boom like that or a twitch or something like that, look for the nose, right? Very important to look for that. It's actually a linguistic shortcut, again, because the muscle is connected directly to that brain. When you walk into a room and you see somebody do that really quick, it usually means they're busy or they're in a place where they're like, what's up? What's going on? What happened? What can I do to kind of sort you out and set you up, right? And it's always, you see this tremendous amount of time when a sales pro is going into a middle managers will typically have this linguistic shortcut going on more often than not because a middle manager's job is just an interruption interrupted by a series of interruptions. And so it can kind of get a little bit, frustrating at times, but so that's where I've seen it the most. It also happens with prospects from time to time. When this happens, just make sure to call it out, right? Okay, so now when we talk about like brushing your nose, and if somebody brushes their nose like very quickly, like sometimes they'll do this or you've seen them do that kind of a thing, this means that there's stress or discomfort that they're dealing with, right? Like they're trying to wipe something off their face that they don't want on, like egg. If I got egg on my face, so I'll wipe it off. It's kind of a thing. People typically go to the nose, and this means stress or discomfort. So if you see someone do this when they're talking with you, stop and be like, hey, are you okay? I just seen you brush your nose. I was wondering, is this landing with you okay? And just don't speed check. Like I always do speed checks when I look at body language. It's usually the normal pattern that I go to. This can also mean somebody is pondering or they're just doing something dubious, scheming, as they say, right? Scheming is usually connotated with negativity, although schemas were developed back in the early 1900s. They used to call them scheme men, who then became con men, which con was actually confidence man. The person with the most confidence typically will win the bet. And the people that can scheme usually can pull off the best confidence. That's where con man came from. And so that's why it got the negative connotation, because it's just an abundance of confidence is what a con man is. That's the actual definition, but people have a negative connotation with it. But this is one of those things that a lot of those people will do from time to time. So keep your eyes open for that, because I think that's really important to know. Next, I want to talk about holding the nose high. What does this mean? Well, when somebody holds their nose high, what does it even look like? If you're looking at me, it looks like looking down the brow of the nose at somebody. You've seen it happen to you, whether it's in sporting or business or something. People will always do this when they indicate confidence, superiority, arrogance, or indignation. Those are basically the 4 or 5 things that people have when they put their nose up like this, right? It's usually signified across the table as arrogant. That's usually the first thing that people think of. And when somebody does this in a sales conversation, it's almost a power move, right? And it happens specifically with the dominant personality types. If you know, I teach extended disc. I know there's bank code, there's Myers-Briggs, there's colors, there's a bunch of other ones. But what I found that this particular body language sign typically comes from a very high dominant business person or a prospect that's just like, yeah, right, you don't know what you're talking about, kind of that arrogant look, right? So if you see that, make sure to kind of call that out. Cultural display. Another great example is the Kremlin guards in Russia. They do that all the time, right? So it's a great example of when this happens. And just wrapping up today, I want to talk about tapping and signaling. So this guy here is actually signaling and tapping, and it indicates the stinks. It indicates I don't trust you. It indicates I'm watching you. And it also can indicate, hey, you got me, you're clever. When you see somebody tap or signal, that usually means negative, 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 or you're just really clever and you pulled one over on me, which is still kind of a negative connotation. And those are the 6 things that you need to know about the nose today. So when you're in your sales calls, look for the nose. It's important to know it. And man, I hope this helped you. I love this stuff and I'm going to continue to geek out on it. I think it's really powerful. And with that said, guess what? You've just been tuned up at another high ticket tune up. Don't forget, I'll be back tomorrow continuing on with the series. We're going to do another part of the nose. There's a few more things you got to know about it. Don't forget to smash the subscribe button, like the video, and share it to somebody that you care about. And don't forget, there's a sales ascender in each and every one of you. I'll talk to you soon.